All right, so let's look at today versus yesterday. I played this little video. A lot of you in this room, it'll be a walk down memory lane. But it sets the stage for what we're facing today versus what we were facing yesterday. So kind of walk down memory lane if you.
I can't believe we made it. According to today's regulators and bureaucrats, those of us who were kids in the 50s, 60s, 70s, or even early 80s probably should not have survived. Our baby cribs were covered with bright-colored lead-based paint. We had no child-proof lids or locks on medicine bottles, doors, or cabinets, and when we rode our bikes, we had no helmets. We drank water from the garden hose and not from a bottle. We ate cupcakes, bread, and butter, and drank soda with lots of sugar in it. But we were rarely overweight because we were always outside playing. We would leave home in the morning and play all day, as long as we were back when the street lights came on. No one was able to reach us all day. Smartphones? We didn't have cell phones at all. No PlayStations, Xboxes, limitless channels on cable, laptops, or tablets. Facebook was an actual face and an actual book. We had friends. We went outside and found them. We played dodgeball, and sometimes the ball would hurt. We fell out of trees, got cut, and broke bones and teeth. And there were no lawsuits from these accidents. No one was to blame but us. Remember accidents? We had fights and punched each other and got black and blue and learned to get over it. We made up games with sticks and tennis balls, and although we were told it would happen, we didn't put out any eyes. We rode bikes or walked to a friend's home, knocked on the door, rang the bell, or just walked right in and talked to him. Little League had tryouts, and not everyone made the team. Those who didn't had to learn to deal with disappointment. Some students weren't as smart as others, so they failed a grade and were held back to repeat the same grade. Tests were not adjusted for any reason. Our actions were our own. Consequences were expected. The idea of parents bailing us out if we got in trouble in school or broke a law was unheard of. They actually sided with the school or the law. Imagine that. Now, this generation has produced some of the best risk-takers, problem solvers, and inventors ever. We had freedom, failure, success, and responsibility, and we learned how to deal with it. If you've related to anything that was just said, you're one of them. Congratulations. You made it.
At the very end, you heard the narrator say that you had freedom, failure, success, and responsibility. Do we still feel like we have those today? Do we still feel like we have freedom to hold our kids accountable and to discipline them? Do we still feel like we're failures as parents? Well, I'll give you that one. How about success? We have the possibility of all of them, don't we? But we're not doing it. We're not doing it because we've reached a point in our lives where we have said, this is the society we live in, this is what they will accept, and I'm not willing to break that culture. We have to break that culture. We have to be the generation of parents that says, it's time to go back to what was working before, not what we hope works. We got to go back to what was working before. And what was working before? Holding your child accountable, teaching them there were consequences for their actions, and being involved in their lives. So many things have changed today, though. How many of you as parents feel like you know what you have to look for in your child's, to be worried about your child, to keep them safe? How many of you become a student of the game? How many of you feel like you're great at technology? In fact, how many of you feel like you're better at technology than your kids are? Think about this for a minute. We used to make a joke, if you will, about the fact that the new prescription bottles they came out with, kids were the only ones that could get them open. Remember that? And today we look at technology and we have to turn to our kids to help us with it. Well, we got to become student of their game. We got to be involved in every capacity. When we look at what's changed today versus yesterday, quite frankly, the social evolution has begun. In fact, it's begun and been started for 10 years. How many of you as parents feel like you are really good at the social media stuff? Really? One. How many of you have a Facebook page? How many of your children have a Facebook page? How many of you are on your child's Facebook page? Fewer hands. You've got to be on their Facebook page. You've got to be involved in it. You've got to monitor everything they do. I say be your child's personal cop. You've got to be that. But what did we do historically? We had to worry about who our children were associating with on the playground, on the school bus. Today we have to worry about it in the bedroom, in the computer, on the texting, everywhere else, because the game has changed. Well, the only way you get back in the game is to be a student of the game, to research and understand everything that they're doing, everything that they're involved in, everything that makes them buzz. And actually, you got to be involved in it just as deep as they are. So we know social evolution has began. How about activities today versus yesterday? I can tell you, when I was growing up, we played violent games. A lot of people want to say that, well, you shouldn't play cops and robbers or this and that because it's fine. We played that. We played cowboys and Indians. We played cops and robbers. We played war. We played all of it. In fact, I can remember when we were playing war, I personally invented play hand grenades. It's incredible. We had a hickory nut tree, and I would throw hickory nuts until I hit one of my buddies in the eye one time. And then Mom got involved, and I didn't have hand grenades anymore. But guess what? Their parents didn't sue us. Their parents didn't say, well, you're never playing with that kid again, because parents then worked together. Parents back then were on the phone or talking to each other at the ball game or at the school in the bus driving line. They were talking to each other about what was going on and what they were doing, and they were working together. I'm a big believer in it. It takes a community to protect a community. It takes parents to help other parents raise their kids. And we got to be involved. We can't talk about suing people and doing all this other stuff, because who are we really helping there? That lawsuit ain't going to get to the courthouse for 3 years. You got to be involved in that parent thing. We played games outside. We played cowboys and Indians outside. And you know what was different? Today, our children are playing video games where there's no personalization to it. It's not their buddy that they're playing with and pretend shooting. It's somebody on a computer-generated model that they're playing, talking in a headset with somebody they never met before in their life on the internet, and they're getting points for killing somebody. There's no realism to it. It's just, let me see how many people I can kill and how many points I can get. But yet, when we were growing up, we would play for a while we were exercising and doing all the other stuff, and then at the midday, we would all sit down at the table and have a peanut butter and jelly sandwich together, and then go back out and divide teams up and play again, because we were friends. It was personalized. It's desensitized is what's happened here. And I got to tell you, when your child's playing a video game that allows them to kill people and splatter blood all over the screen, you know whose fault that is? Yours, because you bought it. Now, I will tell you, my wife and I are extremely opposite when it comes to discipline of the kids. She is over here, and I am over there, all right? I believe in tear that butt up, spare the rod, spoil the child. I believe in tearing it up, and let's move on, all right? 5 minutes later, we're both over it, and we can go outside and shoot hoops or do whatever we're going to do. She likes to put the kids on restriction. I'm not a big fan of restriction. I got to be honest with you. You know why? Because if he's on restriction, I'm on restriction. If he's got to be watched for 2 weeks, I got to watch him. For what? 30 seconds, I can do this. Bam, we're done. But that's her way, and that's okay, all right? Good balance there. But one day she tells me, hey, I got to go to the store. It's his birthday. I said, what you getting? She goes, oh, he wants this video game called Grand Theft Auto. And I chuckled because I thought she was playing a joke on me. And I said, no, seriously, what are you getting? She said, no, he wants a game called Grand Theft Auto. I said, are you serious? I said, do you know what Grand Theft Auto is? She goes, well, it's some game where they steal cars and stuff. Now, you got to keep in mind, I'm married to an Italian-Irish redheaded girl. So I live pretty much in fear, I will tell you that. But I said to her, I said, sit down, I want to show you what this game is. And so I showed her how they not only get points for stealing cars, but for picking up prostitutes and for ripping off drug dealers and for doing all this other stuff, they get points for. And she went, wow, I didn't realize that. Well, that's that student of the game thing. You can't just go buy it because they want it. You got to identify wants and needs, and they're rarely the same. They're rarely the same. So we really have to, as parents, we have to lock down what our kids are watching, what our kids are doing. And it gets worse. It absolutely does. Communication today versus yesterday. Talking at supper versus social media and texting. Ronald Reagan once said that the next great idea for America will start at the dinner table. Well, I can tell you, it'll start in a text message today, because that's how it'll come across. And you know who's the worst violator of it of all? Parents. Because work's more important than sitting there talking with our kids. Can't be anymore. Whatever it is, we'll wait 30 minutes until you finish having dinner with your family. And then you got to take it a step deeper. Because remember, we're role models. So if we're texting, we've made it okay to text. And then you got to take it a step deeper than that. You got to start talking to them at the table. That's hard, isn't it? All right, we sit down, we're all sitting there and we say, man, we're doing something wholesome. We're eating dinner together as a family. And then the inevitable question will pop out. You'll look at your child and you'll say, how was your day? Because that's what we're supposed to do as parents, right? And then they give us the inevitable answer. What is it? Fine. And we accept that. Oh, well, that's good. And then we cut our meat and we continue eating. That's not a conversation with your kid. In fact, it's not even a positive conversation with your kid. Because I don't know about you, but when my wife tells me everything's fine, it's not fine. It is absolutely not. So when your child's telling you everything's fine, it's not fine. You got to dig deeper. What'd you do? How's this class going? You got to have all of this stuff all lined up to talk to them about. Maybe you got to pull it out of them, because at that age, they don't really want to carry on that conversation. But you have to. You have to get them involved. You have to talk to them. You have to be engaged. We went on a camping trip not long ago. And we rented a motorhome, and my wife had never been camping before, so she wanted to go camping. So we rented this motorhome, and luckily she didn't like it, so I don't have to have a permanent motorhome. But when we got in the motorhome, I took the kids' phones from them. I said, the entire time we're gone, you're not going to be playing video games and stuff like that on your phones. And they both looked at me and at the same time said, well, what are we going to do? Well, I don't know. Maybe play a board game. Maybe play cards. Maybe go outside and throw the football. Maybe go back to what used to be pretty cool stuff. But it's all changed, and we allow it to change. Listen, too much of anything is bad. So I'm not saying don't let your kids text and don't let your kids do this and that, but don't let it become their entire life. And most importantly, don't let them see it becoming your entire life. You have to find that balance. How about their clothes? Whose fault is that? Absolutely, 100%. Unless you are giving your kid a credit card and sending them to the store and they're coming back with those clothes, that's your fault. And if you're giving them a credit card and sending them to the store, that's your fault. Pick out what they're going to wear. When you look at what raises a kid's level of behavior, how they appear, their personalities improve, everything else. Disney World years ago when they first started grad night made everybody, in fact they do it today, made everybody wear a tie or dress appropriately. Everybody thought, well, they want it to be a really special night. No. Studies had shown that it increases behavior and positive actions. I used to be the head wrestling coach at Vero Beach High School. And I made my kids, the very first year I was there, wear ties to away matches. I told them they had to wear a tie. In fact, I said, if you don't have a tie, come to school, I'll give you a tie. I had a tie, a bag of ties that I'd gotten from a funeral home. And I got to be honest, there wasn't one good-looking tie in that bag. It only took one kid to show up and get a big, nice, fuzzy bow tie, and the rest of the kids wore a tie the next time. But I told them they had to do it for away matches. After they didn't, they had to wear them to school. After they did it, the first time they came to me and said, Coach, we want to talk to you about our tie policy. I said, okay. They said, we want to do it for every match. You know why? Because it distinguished them as something positive, as something that was team. as something that people looked at them and thought, wow, they're doing something different. We have to make sure our kids are dressing appropriately. It's our fault if they're not. How about respect? Let me tell you, today's kids have lost the art of saying yes, ma'am, and no, ma'am. Yes, sir, and no, sir. Today's kids don't look at you when they talk to you. And part of that is our fault. Part of that is not, we're not putting, maybe everybody's not to the point of yes, sir, and no, sir, and yes, ma'am, and no, ma'am. Me, that's the way I was brought up. But the proper measures, the proper things to do when you're looking and talking to people and how you appear, how you shake hands with somebody, all of those things. Kids today, in fact, my wife and I had this conversation not long ago. One of our kids, he's 15, he's going through that growth, was backsassing her. And I jumped all over him. And she said, I had it under control. I said, let me tell you something. If you don't respect your mom, you don't respect anybody. You don't respect that school teacher, you don't respect anybody. And I will tell you, he's a great kid. But at that age, kids do certain things. We just have to pull them back in. We have to get them in that corrective mode. So we have to reinstill respect. How about their music? Look at your kid's iPhone or music library. Look at that. And look at how many times you see the word explicit. And then I guarantee if you go look at your credit card receipt, it'll match up because you paid for those songs. You allowed it to happen. No. But how many of you have ever even looked at your kid's music collection? How many of you have done that? All right? If it's in there and it's not supposed to be, get it out. Because we're just continuing to echo that message. How about TV? What did you grow up watching? What was it? Leave It to Beaver. Was that a TV show? I'm kidding you. What else? My Three Sons? Brady Bunch. How about Little House on the Prairie? Bonanza? Star Trek? Tell me what each one of those shows has in common. Family and wholesomeness. Each and every one of them. And a lot of people say, well, today's different. A lot of families are separated and divorced. The Brady Bunch was experiencing that. That's what it was all about. And it still brought wholesomeness to the table. But that's not what we watch today. Look at what we watch today. Teen Mom. That's invigorating. 16 and pregnant. That's just a big rubber stamp that says it's okay to be 16 and pregnant. That's what that is. Jersey Shore. And I promise you, if you go look at the ratings on these shows, what you will find is that they are some of the most popular shows out there. And they're popular because they're appealing to an audience of young generations. But we're allowing that. And maybe we're allowing it because we don't have the time to sit there and monitor what they watch. Maybe we're allowing it because we're not technology savvy enough to set the parental controls on the TV. But either way, we're allowing it. And I will tell you, I'm as guilty of that as anyone. We all probably are in some degree. Let's talk about school. 1969, you see the parents and the teacher standing on the same side of the desk, pointing at the child, saying, can you explain these grades? And then today, we see the parents and the child standing on the same side of the desk, asking the teacher to explain the grades. Where did that start? I want to know why that was missing in our house. Because if the teacher called home, you were in trouble. It didn't matter what you had to say. You could go home and tell mom and dad all you wanted. The teacher's picking on me. Well, if you were quiet in the class, they wouldn't even know you were there. It didn't matter. It was our fault. Listen, your teachers are there to help your kids have a better life. And if you're not supporting them, then you're supporting them not having a better life. And listen, just like in any other profession, I guarantee if you ask the other chiefs that are here from Titusville and Rockledge, if you ask them or you ask me, every profession has that small percentage of people that are not good for the profession. But the majority of our teachers and our law enforcement officers are good people that do it because they want your child to be better. They do it because they care. I can guarantee you, teachers aren't doing it for money. There is no doubt about that. They're doing it because they care, and you got to support them. When that teacher calls you and tells you that your child is misbehaving, just make yourself say, my child's misbehaving. Because I guarantee you the teacher didn't want to take time out of their day to have to call you and tell you that. It had to be something disruptive. We got to be on the same page. We got to work together. What is the old thing that it takes a village to raise a child? Well, they're part of the village. You got to support them. You got to believe in them. How about back then? What was it like? If I got in trouble at school, I just told you. I was done. All right? The teachers didn't make stuff up. The teachers just told the truth. And the parents backed the teachers up. So we have to do that. We have to be involved in that. I was in court one time down in Fort Pierce long after I became a police officer. And there was a grandfather in there that was raising his grandchild. And he had disciplined his grandchild and left marks on him. He disciplined his grandchild because he brought home straight F's on his report card. And he held him accountable. He got charged. He went in front of the judge. And I was there on another case. And I was sitting there, and the judge called him and his attorney up and was dealing with it. And the judge said, now, Mr. So-and-so, I'm gonna let you have your grandchild back, but only after you complete a parenting class so that you are a better parent. And you see the grandfather, elderly gentleman, look over, talking to his attorney, and he's shaking his head, and the attorney's shaking his head. And finally, the grandfather raises his hand, and the judge says, yes, sir, you can speak. And he said, so, Judge, I just want to be sure you're telling me that I can have my grandchild back after I go to a parenting class. The judge said, yes, sir, that's absolutely correct. He said, will you keep him then? The judge said, excuse me? He said, I don't need to learn to be a better parent. I was right in what I did. I need you to let me be a parent. The judge calls both attorneys up, talks to them for a few minutes. They go back to their respective podiums. And he says, Mr. So-and-so, I'm going to let you have your child back, but try not to leave marks on him anymore. Because I got news for you. The judge didn't want to raise that kid either. We have to be in that mode where we're going to do it reasonable. I grew up around some guys, girls that were raised by their mom, a single mom, who had 14 children. Miss Williams. The kids that were my age were Ivan and Keenan. We wrestled together, we played football together. And there was a well-known fact that Keenan wasn't allowed to be at wrestling practice on Tuesday. Ivan wasn't allowed to be at wrestling practice on Thursday because that was their day to clean the house. So we got a new wrestling coach, Coach Pete McCabe. And one day he was taking us home, and he tells us, I'm going to talk to your mom. He's got Keenan and Ivan and myself in the car. He said, I'm going to talk to your mom about you guys being at wrestling practice on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And immediately, internally, I said, that's a bad idea. Don't do it. But I figured it'd be fun to watch. So we all got out, and we're standing up on the porch, and Coach McCabe begins to explain to her how important it is for Keenan and Ivan to be at school on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And she's explaining to him how important it is for her house to be clean and for her children to have responsibilities. And so he tells her that team needs them, everything else. She says, well, my team needs them too, but I'm going to make an exception for you, Coach. He says, okay, thank you. She says, I'll expect you to be here on Tuesdays and Thursdays to clean my house. Guess who wasn't at wrestling practice on Tuesdays and Thursdays? Keenan and Ivan. But my story goes a little bit deeper with Miss Williams because she believed in helping raise the kid. Because one day I was over playing basketball in her yard, and Ivan shoved me, and some curse words came out of my mouth. I got the ball, and I brought it back in. Now, I've got to tell you about the basketball court. It was big sand. Backboard was made out of plywood, and the rim was made out of a bicycle tire. That's what we were playing on. I got back with the ball, and I started bringing it in bounds, and all of a sudden, I felt an intense pain on the back of my legs. I turned around, and Miss Williams was switching me. She had a switch. And I took off running. Now, I'm going to tell you how old I was. I ran to my car. And when I got home, my mom and dad were sitting in our front porch swing. And they were swinging back and forth. And as I walked by, they saw the blood on the back of my legs. My dad said, boy, what happened to you? I said, Miss Williams hit me with a switch. He said, I bet you won't do that again. They didn't sue Miss Williams. They didn't call the police on Miss Williams. They were thankful that somebody else was being involved in helping hold their kid accountable. Well, that's where we got to be today because things have changed. There were consequences for our actions back then. Today there are excuses, and the parents are making a lot of them. And I'm going to be tough on you right now. I'm going to tough love you. We got to stop making excuses. We got to hold our children accountable because we're the only ones that can. We have got to make sure that we're setting the course for them.